Assassin's Creed Shadows has been making a lot of people angry and a lot of other people coping like crazy. Recently, a YouTuber has decided to call people out that he believes are grifters, not realizing that he has been swindled by actual grifters into accepting their ideology and refusing to believe that he's been successfully brainwashed himself. First of all, do not harass anyone in this video. This is solely focused on one YouTuber who clearly has no idea what he's talking about, as you'll see how he glosses over so many points that it gets to the point of actual parody. This then brings me to the person in question, Fighting Cowboy, a YouTuber who makes gaming content. I've never interacted with him on social media or anything like that in the past. I was aware of him, existing, but I always figured he was just some guy that makes content on Souls-like games. Which, hey, that's cool. Good for you. Do what you love on YouTube. But he decided to have a live stream recently where you can visibly hear his voice trembling. Like he's afraid for most of it, trying to say that grifters, as he puts it, are the reason why gaming sucks now, while completely disregarding everything surrounding every topic he brings up, which proves that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about at all. I'll have to cut out his swears as he speaks in his stream because this guy likes to cuss a lot, and I am not really someone who does that sort of thing, so if his voice cuts out randomly at times, I apologize. It's just that, again, he's swearing like crazy here, so just so you know. But I was first brought to the attention of this by a PC Gamer article titled Assassin's Creed Shadows Streamer Goes Viral After Confronting Whining Commenters. Normal people don't get upset about this SHIT. So there's two rants that he has. The first one is shorter, but to summarize that one quicker, he basically tells his viewers that if you don't like Yasuke being in Shadows, that you're not welcome to watch things on his channel, which is fair enough. That's his YouTube channel. Do what you want to do, but I'm going to react to his much longer reaction here. So let's start with what Fighting Cowboy has to say.
Things have been pretty spicy since the Assassin's Creed stream, and your typical, well, first and foremost, let me say there has been a huge amount of support and people in agreement, and really appreciate that. It's nice to know I'm not the only one who is tired of all this bull. But then, your typical grifters went and picked the story up, and now there's all sorts of dumb made-up bull floating around, so I figured, let's do a stream, let's discuss, but regardless, let's talk. Let's talk about what happened. Now, for those that were not here the other day, we were playing Assassin's Creed Shadows.
So as he starts, you can see that Cowboy calls anyone who disagrees with him as a grifter who brings up made-up BS about the games they talk about, which is already showing that we're off to a bad start with a guy who clearly has no idea what's going on. So let's focus on Shadows for now here, but even in my previous video, I talk about how Yasuke was responsible for killing Momochi Sandayu. That's the leader of the Iga Shinobi, despite Yasuke only being a samurai for 6 months at this point. By the way, Momochi Sandayu and the Iga Shinobi, those are real things that actually existed. Anyway, I made the comparison that Yasuke being able to kill Momochi Sandayu in combat would be like a random guy being given a sword and trained for like 6 months, and suddenly being able to kill Ezio in combat. It's ridiculous, but this is what Shadows is kind of like all the time while you're playing it. Fighting Cowboy then says this.
Let's make it hell, we can make it an open invitation for anyone that actually wants to try and stand on business instead of making up little bull to help get their viewers angry.
Okay, so we're making up things apparently to make people angry. That's interesting. Again, I didn't make up that Sandayu being killed by Yasuke. That is literally in the game. Unless I forgot that I somehow worked on this game for years, wrote and animated these sequences myself, then maybe I could be making it up. But when it comes to literally anything from Shadows, Veilguard, and more, if you've seen my content, I always bring examples, proof, and actual gameplay footage of the games that I talk about. Usually from games that I do buy and play myself, so I can report on them from a view of someone who's actually experienced these games. So again, Cowboy is just making up things to justify his own hubris, but it keeps getting worse. He then says this about Yasuke.
And at the part of the stream we were at, Yasuke was on screen. Now, for those that don't know, Yasuke is a historical figure in Japanese history. He was brought over by the Portuguese and then taken by Nobunaga. Now, there's obviously a lot of iffy records about what happened back then. Some people say he was a retainer. Some people say he was raised up to a samurai. Regardless, I'm not here to talk about that. Okay, that's beyond the point.
Wow, okay, so Yasuke was historically correct to be a legendary samurai, Cowboy states here. Oh boy, let's get into it. So this guy is so out of his depth, it's incredible that this stream is still up, and I'm not kidding. Somebody please tell Cowboy that the Yasuke story that he's white knighting for is based on Thomas Lockley's supposed historical documents. So that everyone knows for context here, Yasuke's historical evidence is solely from the works of Thomas Lockley, who is a professor. Every single thing that says that Yasuke was some sort of legendary samurai, it derives from this guy's work. So, was it true? Well, let me tell you. In July 2024, Japanese users and historians challenged Thomas Lockley's claims that Yasuke was an actual black samurai. The Japanese users then dug deeper and discovered some very crazy proof. Let's look at it here, where it turns out that Thomas Lockley was actually working under a username called Tom Totori. And when people discovered that Thomas Lockley by accident posted on his Tom Totori account but acted as if he was still on his public Thomas Lockley account, users then quickly cross-referenced the two accounts and discovered that this Tom Totori, who is actually Lockley, was actually purposely going to the Wikipedia page of Yasuke himself and adding entire falsified historical documents and events that claimed that Yasuke was actually a part of events when he actually wasn't, as you're seeing on screen. This is what Thomas Lockley put on Wikipedia. So, when Lockley got exposed, that was last year, he then turned tail and ended up deleting all of his social media accounts and closing everything down. Because he very obviously got found out that he and his Tom Totori account were simply swindling people and publishers like Ubisoft into believing that Yasuke truly did exist and was a real samurai when he wasn't. Why would Lockley do this? Well, Cowboy won't tell you because he doesn't know anything about what he's talking about except trembling his voice while trying to find the words to speak. It actually turns out that Thomas Lockley, like I said, sold a book that he wrote himself that he pushed as historically accurate, and it's titled Yasuke, the True Story of the Legendary African Samurai. True story, huh? Well, we know that isn't true at all. And by the way, if you want to buy the book, it's listed at $170 Canadian, if you can believe it. That's like, I don't know, 140, 150 American or so. So it's very obvious that the reason why Lockley was pushing this clearly false story as fact was to make himself a fortune off pushing a diverse samurai in a setting that he wasn't in. Thomas Lockley even admitted in his own words that were collected here that he first heard of Yasuke as a concept in 2009. Here's what it reads. I first met Yasuke in 2009 when I was looking at the Wikipedia page of Miori Shohari, a British diplomatic advisor who served Tokugawa Ieyasu, and found him in the See Also section. I was surprised. Well, there was such a person. This dude found out about Yasuke through Wikipedia. I'm not kidding. And then Lockley then took this barely one paragraph worth of information that only stated based on Japanese scholars that Yasuke came to Japan, he was bought by Oda Nobunaga. Then when Oda died 6 months later, Akechi Mitsuhide, his general, told his soldiers to return Yasuke to his Jesuit owners, and then they were all forced to leave Japan forever. Also remember that around this time when Shadows takes place and when Yasuke briefly existed within its history was around the 1600s. The very beginning of that century, actually. This was the exact time when Japan as a country unanimously decided to close their borders to any further foreigners to enter their lands. So Yasuke literally got to Japan, met a rich guy, danced for him, and held his tools. He then died, Oda that is, and then Yasuke got kicked out. That's literally his legacy. That's all he did in history that is recorded. Cowboy, of course, knows none of this and instead just believes what he's told by Access Media because he is not someone who clearly does any research when it comes to anything like this.
Yasuke is a historical figure in Japanese history.
Don't ask questions, just consume product.
Now, there's obviously a lot of iffy records about what happened back then.
And then get excited for next.
And again, in his defense, he's not a news per se YouTuber. This guy just plays video games and reviews them, which is fair enough. And look, despite this video, I don't hate Cowboy, but I do want to make the point that if he's going to try to dissuade other YouTubers from speaking up against cultural and historical revisionism, then he needs to be able to back up his claims, which he doesn't, and it continues to not do, as you'll keep seeing in this video, as it just keeps getting worse, dude. So too long didn't read version, Yasuke was never a samurai, he never fought in any battles, and Shadows is completely based on the falsified documents made by Thomas Lockley, a white man professor who profited by pushing a fake black samurai story to just line his own pockets. And then once he got caught, he ran with his tail between his legs, deleted all of his social media, and then disappeared from the internet, and no one's heard from him since. But Cowboy will tell you with a straight face that this is all real, but I guess if you get enough idiots in a room repeating the same thing, they will eventually believe that it's true. Cowboy then brings up fighting the Pope in AC2 and the flying machine as not being historically accurate.
Because Assassin's Creed has always been historical fiction. We never actually punched a pope. We never actually had flying machines. That shouldn't be an issue. In that moment, we were playing the game, and we weren't even playing yet. We were basically in like the opening cutscene, and we had people that were upset specifically about the existence of a black guy in a Japanese setting. This had nothing to do with Ubisoft's microtransactions, had nothing to do with optimization, had nothing to do with the setting. It was simply black dude in a Japanese game. And then of course your typical grifters, they like to make up bullshit. You know, oh, woke leftist Cowboy is, I don't know, shilling for Ubisoft and blah, 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 because none of them actually have a point to stand on.
First of all, fighting the Pope was cool as hell, and it would only be a problem if the final boss of AC2 was someone who didn't make sense within that world at that time. It actually made a lot of sense that the Templar Order would have infiltrated the highest echelons of societal rule at the time, hence why the church got infected by Templar influence. As for the flying machines, they were sketches designed by Leonardo da Vinci at the time, and prototypes did exist. Now, did he actually fly them in real life? No, he didn't, but the existence of these contraptions in the game is explained because Leonardo admits that he studies the piece of Eden that he has that allows him to further understand such technologies, and you would know this, Cowboy, if you play that game. The existence of these pieces of Eden have been in Assassin's Creed since the very beginning, and they've always, so to speak, warped the history of the games they were in to allow weird things to happen. Of course, in the Crusades, there was not an apple that could make duplicates or control men's minds as it is in the first game either. But while these games can have fun with their settings, at the very least, we can't admit that Leonardo did exist during the Italian Renaissance. He did have those sketches, he did have those prototypes, and he wasn't thrown out of Italy in 6 months like Yasuke was in Japan. There's a very big difference in bending history to allow for a gameplay mechanic versus completely rewriting the history of an entire nation's people, and then insinuating that a foreign black man was the savior of the entire Japanese race. And if you can't correlate the difference between the two, well, you're more lost than I thought. He then brings up that we are all apparently weak-willed men.
They're all little, weak-willed men that like to hide behind avatars or made-up names, and they don't actually stand on business. They don't. They probably don't stand at all. I can't imagine most of these people are active. They probably don't go to the gym. They probably don't work out. They probably just sit inside all day and hide. But that's beyond the point, okay? Let's give the grifters a break for a second.
So we all stay inside, we don't work out, even though I do every second or third day. I do try my best, and if we want to be serious, this Cowboy guy, he kind of looks like he just started working out based on how he looks, so I mean, good for him, so I have no idea why he's trying to act like he's some sort of alpha male. The dude clearly still likes to eat, and from one dude who likes to eat to another, don't try to act like you're some Adonis Hercules type man, come on. You play video games for a living. You likely stay inside just as much as your detractors do. This is such a dumb argument, man. What are you doing? And saying that we hide behind made-up names. Dude, you go by Fighting Cowboy. I assume your parents didn't name you Fighting as in a first name. And if they did, that's crazy. But I'm going to assume you, like everyone else on the internet, pretty much has a username too. Yeah, my real name is not Endymion. The same way I'm pretty sure Mr. Beast's first name is not Mr. What are we even talking about here? And why is this guy's voice trembling constantly?
About a black guy on the screen, and that needs to happen more. Why did I get so angry? Let's talk about it. Because, bro, it's obnoxious.
It's like he's afraid to say what he thinks because he's scared people will turn on him or something. Like, dude, if you believe these things that you're saying, then stand on the business as you say and just speak your mind like a man. Why are you talking like this the whole time? You're an adult, not a kid presenting in second grade. I thought this was the apex of pathetic in this, but unfortunately it gets worse. He then brings up Stellar Blade.
For real, let's talk about the last year in gaming. Stellar Blade drama, because there was a titty window added. Oh, they're censoring, they're taking away the gooning. Elden Ring drama.
Why are you talking like this the whole time?
Because, oh, they hid it behind a boss. They hid it behind a boss and it's too expensive. I mean, actually, no, I could probably come up with drama for every game we had, I bet. Let me pull up a playlist of the last year.
Again, Cowboy doesn't know what he's talking about. The entire Stellar Blade controversy was because websites attacked the game for having a sexy main character. The other controversy was that the game's outfits for Eve got censored when Shift Up, that's the developers of the game, assured fans that there would be no censorship in the game when it launched, but then when it released, it was obvious that there actually was censorship. How do I know this? Because I actually played Stellar Blade. I platinumed the game. I reported on it. I didn't just get my opinion at random from someone else. I went out of my way to ensure that I played the game from start to finish to find these things out for myself, and again, why would the players be mad that Eve was portrayed as sexy and slim and athletic? It wasn't the fans, it was the websites, dude. Here's thegamer.com complaining about Stellar Blade in their article. That's not enough? Okay, here's IGN France where they say this about the design of Eve themselves. Eve from Stellar Blade is just bland, a doll sexualized by someone who has never seen a woman. Well, then it turned out that Eve was actually designed by King Huang Tai, that's the guy who owns Shift Up, the development studio for Stellar Blade, and it turns out that his wife of all people, as you can see here on screen, was actually responsible for Eve's design. Uh-oh. So the design of Eve, a sexy woman, was made by another woman. Again, fighting Cowboy, he doesn't bring any of this up for you when it comes to context. It's just, let's own the chuds by spreading misinformation ourselves and completely disregarding all facts about anything to make it sound like we're winning. This guy is embarrassing himself left and right. It's actually so easy to disprove his claims, it's kind of getting pathetic the longer this video goes on. But he then brings up Stalker 2, saying people didn't like it because it was made in Ukraine.
Stalker 2, people were upset just because the fact that it was a Ukrainian studio, so that got a bunch of...
Which is also not true. The reason why Stalker got any flack at all was because it ran like absolute garbage for pretty much everyone when it first released. And then the devs attempted to claim that it ran badly because of the ongoing war, which I mean, fair enough, but we know that the team who made it fled Ukraine a long time ago and made the game elsewhere. And blaming the state of your commercial product that requires money to be bought on a war is very odd to me. Again, this whole nobody likes it because it's Ukrainian, that makes zero sense. You have nothing to back that up. All of the people Cowboy seems to agree with just meat rides the Ukraine war too, so this is just another lie by this guy, but my god, it just keeps going. He then brings up, of all things as a gotcha, Dragon Age Veilguard.
Dragon Age, people were upset that there was a character who went by they, them in the game, so that got a bunch of
People didn't hate Veilguard because of Tash. She was one of the many reasons why that game sucked absolute balls. Sure, Tasha's entire story being about her wanting to be non-binary was ridiculously stupid considering there was an apocalyptic event going on outside, and she was a fully grown woman that still didn't know her own gender. Come on, man. But it was also the fact that the game was not really a Dragon Age game. It ruined the lore. It erased basically all of our choices from previous games. It ruined Thetis, that's the name of the whole Dragon Age world, as a setting completely and gave us subpar forgettable companions, and sidelined Solus in the first 30 minutes of the game for two nothing villains that are the epitome of mustache-twirling bad guys instead. And beyond all of this, the insane amount of trans and non-binary representation, every villain being a white man or woman, which is true by the way. And if you don't believe me, I played the game. I covered that extensively on the channel with examples and everything. If you want to go look, it's all there to see. I am not lying. I bring all the receipts. And the game also ends with some shadowy group called the Executors saying that all the events of Dragon Age are actually their fault, and that none of the villains in any of the previous games had any agency of their own, basically. They were all just working for this Executor new group. Like, come on, dude. This Cowboy guy is so out of his depth. Everything that he's brought up so far is completely and unbelievably wrong. But then, as another gotcha, if you can believe it, he brings up Avowed.
Avowed, which came out, people were upset about Avowed because the existence of pronouns was offensive.
Really? People were mad about Avowed's pronouns. That's it. So you're just going to completely ignore the art director, who admitted that he doesn't hire white people and wants people like Elon Musk and Trump to die, and that he hates most of his consumer base. Really, Cowboy? Do you know anything about any of the things that you're listing off here? Because so far, it seems like you are one of the least equipped people to be speaking on any of these things. But of course, he then brings up Shadows again.
And now people are upset about Shadows because there's gay stuff and a black guy.
I don't think I need to explain that one again, as I already told you guys how Yasuke's story was completely fabricated and we have all the proof to show it. So this is just Cowboy again doubling down on his own inability to know things about the stuff that he claims that he can talk about. He then brings this up about Yasuke.
You can bang Nobunaga's sister. They're gonna look like Walter White in that Breaking Bad meme where they're like, Jesse, what the f are you talking about? Normal people don't get upset about this, okay? This is a manufactured issue in the online space by grifters. Now I'm doing this. I'm trying to present an olive branch because there's a lot of people that are coming into the comments, leaving dumb. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think you're all mentally ill. I think a lot of y'all have been lied to.
Yeah, Cowboy, it's not a good look that Yasuke's canon love interest is a woman dubbed the Mother of Japan in real life, who also died with her husband because she was so loyal to him that when his castle was being sieged in real life, she sent her daughters away and died with her husband. So you tell me, why would a woman that literal emperors from Japan descended from and was a devoted wife and mother to multiple children even have the time or ability to meet with someone like Yasuke, who wasn't in Japan at the time, by the way, to do things without someone in her kingdom even seeing her? Do you realize that people in Japan, these sorts of individuals who were like, pretty much, how will we put it, royalty, I guess, were constantly being followed by servants and such? There's no way this would have happened. This is like fan fiction at this point. Come on, Cowboy. Give us something, anything. Just be right at least once in this entire rant. He then tries to say that the entire Shadows thing is manufactured.
This is a manufactured issue in the online space by grifters. I think a lot of people that are getting riled up by these grifters, I think you're just looking for someone to reach out to, and you don't know that you're having smoke blown up your ass by people that profit off your outrage. And so I'm doing this video to try and give y'all a hand. Cowboy, they made the games woke. No, they didn't. Cowboy, they made the games woke. No, they didn't.
Dude, the game's depiction of Japan was so bad that it was brought before the national diet in Japan's highest level of government. Are you kidding us? I've frankly never seen someone be so ill-equipped to speak on things than right now. I originally thought this Cowboy guy was just a gaming YouTuber. And now it's so obvious that he's just an NPC that follows whatever mainstream media tells him to believe. This guy is vaccinated against COVID, isn't he? I would bet money he is. This guy will believe anything these people tell him. Good lord, dude. He then brings up things like games always having gender options, and it's not actually a secret agenda. I'm not kidding. Listen to this.
We had this all the way back in the day. You had gay relationships in Mass Effect. You could choose your gender in RPGs as long as games have been around, bro.
How many genders fighting, Cowboy? Come on, don't be shy. How many genders were there in previous games? Male and female, right? Wasn't male, female, they, them, non-binary, z, zer, zhi, jum, shinga, binga, bing, bong. No, it was he and she, and you know it, but let's keep going.
Like, this isn't new. It's not some secret agenda that people are pushing out there.
So we're just going to conveniently just step around the whole USAID thing and how the government went in after Trump was elected, and then discovered that many of the program's agendas and all the trans stuff was being directly funded by US taxpayer money without them knowing it. And that the moment that Trump pulls said funding, all of these movements and initiatives suddenly fall apart because they weren't actually making any money, and they could only exist as long as they could leech off the American taxpayer. Not a hidden agenda. Dude, this guy is so out of his depth here. I feel like that I'm in a fist fight with a 3-year-old, and this just isn't fair at this point. He then brings up representation.
And we're seeing more inclusivity. We're seeing more diversity. I'm a big straight white dude. Looking at this chat, I would guess probably a fraction of the people in this chat are big straight white dudes. All right? I had to say this before, but the world isn't big straight white dudes. There's more than that. And we're seeing representation for those people so that they can see some in media and be like, yo, that's cool. I relate to this character.
Yeah, people were so against representation in video games like Assassin's Creed. You're totally right, Cowboy. But nobody tell this guy that the first game starred a Middle Eastern dude named Altair. He's Syrian, by the way, and literally nobody complained about that. Also, nobody complained about Adewale getting his own DLC on Black Flag. Nobody complained about Bayek or Aya being playable in Origins, which was set in Egypt. And Bayek literally, what's that? Oh, he had dark skin, just like Yasuke. Imagine that. Where was the outrage there, Cowboy? Oh, right, there wasn't any. Could it be that these games, as long as they star people native to where they actually take place, that nobody minds? Even Mirage, that just came out before Shadows, and it starred a Muslim assassin in Baghdad, for God's sakes. Was there any outrage about that? Oh, right, there wasn't. It seems, and I could be crazy, but it seems that this is the one and only time people don't like this Yasuke implementation because it's so forced here, it's obvious. Like, while I'm sure some people did complain, the majority of the fan base also loved Aveline and Liberation 2. I really like that game. And Assassin's Creed 3 has you playing as a Native American. Where was the outrage, Cowboy? Like, this guy just focuses on Yasuke. And then conveniently forgets everything else because it doesn't support his stance. This guy is the most I get my news from IGN dude to ever exist. If IGN told Cowboy that Yasuke was the grandfather of Alexander the Great, this Cowboy guy would believe it at face value, despite it both making zero sense both DNA and time-wise. Just incredible, dude. How someone can be so ill-equipped to tackle such issues is amazing. He then brings up that the media is not against white Christian males. And we're all apparently living in small towns.
Now we're upset that everything isn't straight white Christian male? Like, it doesn't make sense, dude. It doesn't make sense. Like, what is so fucking upsetting about the fact that there's other kind of people besides you out there? And if that is upsetting, like, dude, you need to expand your worldview.
Notice how his voice trembling when he talks too. Come on, dude, you're a grown man. Stand on business like you said in the beginning. Why aren't you doing that? And media is not against white Christians? Has this guy looked at Europe recently? Dude, you get thrown in jail for questioning anything in places like England and more when it comes to migration. And how those places are siphoning their own people's money to make way for a new wave of religions to overtake Europe. You can't be serious. Places like Germany that claim that migrants are just as German as native-born Germans, but as soon as they start thinking about World War III, oh, imagine that. The propaganda starts up and immediately and conveniently the German government suddenly remembers what an actual German man looks like all of a sudden. Fancy that, Cowboy. Oh, I wonder why. Or how that Adolescence Netflix show, which adapted real-life current knife attacks in England, but then conveniently race-swapped the actual killer to a small white boy. Here's the actual person that it's based on, and they look nothing alike. I think you're trying to make propaganda claiming that the biggest fear to native English people are small white boys. Are you kidding me, dude? And they went as far as to try to say that this little white boy that he was an extremist due to right-wing culture. Oh my god, dude. I just can't. Look, I can keep going with Cowboy's rant, but I think at this point it's become evidently clear that this man has absolutely zero concept of what he's talking about, even at the best of times here. Look, I won't deny this guy that he maybe knows about his games, okay? He's into Soulsborns, good for him, but it's obvious to me, and likely even to you now, that this guy just needs to stick to playing his Souls-likes, man, and that's pretty much it. And when he claims that others are grifters, but then either conveniently ignores the actual grifters who've rotted out studios and franchises we love like Batman Arkham or Dragon Age for ESG money, it's very clear to me anyway that Cowboy here is completely and utterly out of his mind when it comes to speaking on the actual culture within video games. He obviously just wants to keep his channel simple and review games, which is fair enough, you know, more power to him if that's what he wants to do. And hey, I think he should keep doing that, despite this guy likely hating me, even though he and I have never spoken or interacted once ever. I don't hate this guy, but I mean, come on, man. Yeah, he is misinformed. I do think he's clearly agenda-driven, and it's very obvious that he is jumping through hoops to ensure that he can retain the access he desperately needs to keep his channel relevant so he can review games before they come out for views. And look, I understand wanting to keep a good relationship with whichever company. By the way, he got Shadows early because, again, of course he did, because he didn't question Ubisoft even once. But like I said, it's so obvious that this guy lives with blinders on when it comes to not just video games, but life in general. I mean, clearly, Europe doesn't hate white Christians. If you can objectively look at the state of the world as a white man yourself and not see that every institution, government, and propaganda around you hates you, you're the exact kind of white male these sorts of places want. You know, the kind that just lays on his back and lets them have their way with you. It's honestly pathetic to see so many guys like this that will literally just bend over backwards so much to ensure they can still get their access and whatever else. And it's obvious to me that this is Cowboy's case. His access to free media is more important to him than the integrity of the video game industry as a whole and everyone outside of it. This guy will literally ignore the burning house beside him as long as someone gives him a free game to distract him. I also find that the way he talks and how he conveys his emotions and points to be, and I don't want to sound mean, but is he special needs? I don't mean this in like a mean way, but like, you're a grown man, clearly, yet the way you convey things is he special needs? Because if he is, then this all makes sense. But if he isn't, then it's just him being oblivious to the world around him because it suits his agenda and lifestyle. Look, everyone who thinks Shadows is propaganda does not live in a small town. I don't live in a small town. I don't spend all day inside. I go to the gym just like you do. I have a girlfriend and all that too, if that even matters to this argument, even though if I didn't have a girlfriend or went to the gym, what would that have to do with Shadows? But I guess this guy seems to evaluate other men's worth the same way an OnlyFans girl or e-girl does too, where they only seem to rank someone's importance on if they're sexually active or something. Again, really weird. I'm good, guys. I have a girlfriend and all that, but if you ask me, I don't think me having a girlfriend somehow validates or invalidates my opinion on a video game. Like, what are we doing? Because these two things have nothing in common when it comes to my opinion on a commercial product, but as you can see, this Cowboy guy is, I hate to say it, he's kind of a moron, I have to say. He clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. He walks around every single game he mentions without knowing literally anything about any of the controversies surrounding those games. He's just someone that is reliant on free access to games to make his living, and he knows that if he questions any of the companies that pushes his propaganda in some way, that he will be revoked that access he desperately needs to validate himself as a YouTuber. I couldn't care less what any company thinks of me. I think that's very obvious to everyone. I will always say what I think, and even if Ubisoft hates me, they can't sue me for critically speaking about their game that I bought with my own money so that I could review it and comb through it to my heart's content. If you believed Cowboy's opinions here, you'd think the world is just full of Care Bears and gaming is totally fine, when in reality it's anything but that. And I find it actually harmful that people like this have for so long been in this space and haven't once thought it was their responsibility to speak up for the players. But clearly, when you take people like Cowboy or Mighty Keef or Actman, all content creators who kind of existed more or less for the same amount of time-ish, these are all the same kinds of content creators who never really spoke up for players. They were perfectly content to allow your video games to simply become leftist propaganda machines that spat on you and the franchises that you loved and would call you bigots or worse if you stepped out of line and questioned them. Let me repeat that. These people were totally fine with letting your games die. And games didn't really start to heal until, and I don't want to toot my horn here too much, but let's be honest, until people like me finally took a stand and actually started to call these things out. I wasn't the first to do it, I know that. People like Yellow Flash or, Asmongold preceded me, but the point stands that it's because of us that your games and the industry, and your movies and your TV and your MCU and whatever else is changing. That's the Critical Drinker, that's Nerdrotic, that's Geeks and Gamers, yada yada yada. That's all of us, we're all doing that. And they're not changing these things into what you want because they want to do that. They're changing it to what you want it to be because we're forcing them to through movements, closing our wallets, and voicing our opinions, which you should do. And if anyone thinks it's bad for customers to voice their concerns about a product, regardless if it's a movie, game, or anything else, those people are a part of the problem. And we are all stupider now, having now sat here listening to Fighting Cowboy speak his mind on video games. I can only hope that he educates himself, keeps his head down, and shuts up when it comes to the culture and issues in video games going forward. Because if this guy wasn't willing to speak up for you when he first started his channel, there's no way in hell he's willing to do it even now. Because if it was up to Cowboy, all your games would be full of trans people and black samurais and they-them main characters. And he, alongside many others, would get on their knees and eat the gray slop and suck the schlong of the industry as long as they got patted on the head when they were done, and then they would get called good boys and girls and they-themers and then sent a code for the next video game for them to consume. Oh joy! May God have mercy on this man's soul, may he never speak on these things that he clearly knows nothing about, and if this is the best that his side can do when it comes to disavowing the culture of entertainment changing, we have nothing to worry about. Because they can't stop us, we're winning, thank you for watching, subscribe, and someone get Fighting Cowboy his baby bottle, that man is teething.